Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are discussing from the chapter 17 of Bhagavad-Gita, text 8, 9 and 10. Chapter 17 of the Bhagavad-Gita is called the Divisions of Faith. The previous chapter 16 was called the Divine and Demoniac Natures. So the connection, before we come to these verses, I'd just like to build up to them and give a brief synopsis or brief summary and as to what is happening a few verses before. But before that, the connection between chapter 17 and 16 is that, and Prabhupada in his first text of chapter 17 in the purport, he mentions that, and we'll discuss that. We'll go through that again in a minute. But at the end of chapter 16, the last text, text 24, we can all look at it. Lord Krishna finishes that chapter by saying, Tasmat Shastram Paramanam te Kare Akare Vyavasthito Gyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam Kartum Irahasi. Which means one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Now chapter 17 opens with a question. Arjuna asks a question, and here is a link between chapter 16 and 17, because of all these 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, they link up. There's a connection with one verse to the next verse, and there's a connection between one chapter to the next chapter. So it's all linked, and it's been divided in a systematic and scientific way as to show various themes running across within these 700 verses. And chapter 17 will deal, Krishna will provide information on different types of faith. And this is where Arjuna asks the question to Krishna. Because in the end of chapter 16, Lord Krishna is saying one must act with faith according to the rules and regulations of the scriptures. Arjuna asks, first text of chapter 17, he says, Arjuna vacha ye shastram vidham usrajya yajante shraddhayanvita tesham nishtha tuka Krishna sattvam aho rajastama. He says, Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scriptures? Because Krishna said one must follow the principles of scriptures in the last end of chapter 16. But Arjuna here is asking very, very important question, and we find that there are a lot of schools of thought, there are a lot of paths or religious paths or spiritual paths or whatever path connected with the religion. They may and may not be based on scriptures. Some of them are based on one's imagination, some are based on one's own personal thoughts, understanding, which may not be based on the scriptural understanding. So, very important question Arjuna asks. What is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scriptures, but worship according to their own imagination? They still have faith. They have faith, but don't have faith in the scriptures. They have their own faith. and according to their own faith and understanding and imagination, they worship. And then Arjuna asks, are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? Because earlier chapters, Lord Krishna made it very crystal clear, especially chapter 13, that it is the three modes of material nature, mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance, which dictates all living entities. Everything is based one's thoughts, one's eatables, one's environment, one's whatever one wears. It's everything is categorized in these three modes of material nature. So here Arjuna asks, are they those who have faith but not in the scriptures? What mode do they fall into? Does somebody know how to increase the sound? She needs it louder. Is this better? I mean, I got mic much. It's still louder. Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol. Okay. I think that's loud enough, right? Oh, okay. So, and Srila Prabhupada actually he starts this connection between chapter 16 and 17 in this purport. He says, in the 4th chapter, text 39, we can all turn to chapter 4, text 39. It is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge. Because 439, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara samayatendriya jnanam labdhava param shantim achirana adhigacchati. Because from faith, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam, and a faithful man who is dedicated to the transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. What knowledge? Transcendental knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains a supreme spiritual peace. So faith brings knowledge, and knowledge brings peace. And Prabhupada talks about that. But in the 16th chapter, Prabhupada says, it concluded one who does not follow the principles laid down in the scriptures is called a demon, an asura. And one who follows the scriptures is called a deva or demigod. Now if one has faith but doesn't follow the scriptures, what happens? That's what same question Arjuna asks, and Prabhupada is actually clarifying that. And Lord Krishna answers that. Text 2, we'll just go very briefly. So, Trividha bhavati shraddha dahinam sasvabhavaja sattviki rajasi chaiva tamasi chaititam shranu. The Supreme Personality Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds, in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. Satvan rupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharat shraddha mayo ayam purisho yo yash shraddha sa eva saha. O son of Bharat, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. So one's faith is dependent on one's nature, and this nature is there because of three modes of material nature. The living being is said to be of particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. Text 4, Yajante satvika devan yaksh rakshamsi rajasa pretan bhuta ganams chanye yajante tamasa janaha. Men in the mode of goodness worship demigods, those in the mode of passion worship the demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Text 5 and 6. Ashastra vihitam ghoram tapayante ye tapo janaha damba ahamkar samyukta kamarag balanvita karshantya sharirastham bhut gramam chetasa Mam Chevanta Sharirastham Tan Vidya Asura Nishchayan. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures. Again, the word scriptures is coming. Performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body as well as the super soul dwelling within, are known as demons. And now today's text, one before, in text 7 now. Aharastava api sarvasya trividho bhavati priya yagya tapas tatha danam tesham bhedam imam shranu. Even the food each person prefers is of three kinds, according to three modes of material nature. The same is true for sacrifices, austerity and charity. Now here of the distinction between them. So the food one eats, the sacrifices one performs, the austerity one performs, and also charity one gives. And also in the 18th chapter, in the early verses, Lord Krishna gives further knowledge is also in three modes. And so we go to today's verses 8, 9 and 10. Number 8, Ayu Sattva Balarogya Sukha Priti Vivardhana Rasya Sanigdha Stira Hridaya Ahara Satvika Priya. So here, text 8, 9 and 10, Krishna gives information on the type of food and what type of modes they come in. Foods dear to those in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence and give strength, health, happiness and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome and pleasing to the heart. So these types of food, they fall into the category of mode of goodness. And what falls in the mode of passion is Katva Amal Lavanatya Ushnat Tiksha Ruksha Vidahina Ahara Rajasyashtha Dukkha Sokshamya Prada. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry and burning are dear to those in the mode of passion. Such foods cause distress, misery and disease. And now today we'll talk about text 10 in a bit more detail. It has a long purport as well. So I normally do word by word and then say the verse, but we may not have time for that. I just say the verse. Please repeat after me. Yat yamam gat rasam Puti parishritam chayat Uchishtam api cha medhyam Bhojanam tamas priyam. Yeah. Okay, word to word, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Word to word, Yat Yamam, food cooked 3 hours before being eaten. Gat Rasam, tasteless. Puti, bad smelling. Paryushitam, decomposed. Cha, also. Yat, that which. Uchishtam, remnants of food eaten by others. Api, also. Cha, and. Amedhyam, untouchable. Bhojanam, eating. Tamasa, to one in the mode of darkness. Priyam, dear. Translation: food prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, food that is tasteless, decomposed and putrid, and food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is dear to those in the mode of darkness. Please repeat after me. Food prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, food that is tasteless, decomposed and putrid, and food consisting of remnants and untouchable things is due to those in the mode of darkness. So, purport, it's long purport, so I will try to comment as we go along rather than read and comment later. That may work out better. The purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. This is the only purpose. So Prabhupada here very, very clearly talks about what is the purpose of food, which is to increase the duration of life, naturally, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. In text chapter 3, text 11, purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about, he quotes a verse from one of the Vedas. I'll just find that for you, which talks about why one eats. He says, Ahar Shuddho Sattva Shuddhi Sattva Shuddho Dhruva Smriti Smriti Labhe Sarva Granthinam Vipra Mokshaha. By performance of yajna, one's eatables become sanctified. What is that yajna? In this case, is the act of offering the food. And by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. That's what Prabhupada is talking about here. It purifies the mind. By purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified, and when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. And all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present day society. So, the purpose of food, and especially sanctified food, and what can be sanctified? That food which is in the mode of goodness, not in the mode of passion or ignorance. So the purpose of food is to increase life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. This is its only purpose, nothing else. In the past, great authorities, what authorities? Great authorities like Vyasadeva, Swayambhav Manu, Patanjali Muni, Yagyavalkya Rishi, and even Lord Krishna himself. He's selected those foods, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, Yome Bhakta Pranashati. In the chapter 9, text 26, Krishna is also saying, offer me a leaf, a water, a flower, a fruit, I will accept that. So different types of categories of food. The great authorities have told the living beings, human beings, to eat. Great authorities selected those foods that best aid health and increase life's duration, such as milk products, sugar, rice, wheat, fruits, and vegetables. These foods are very dear to those in the mode of goodness. Some other foods, such as baked corn and molasses, while not very palatable in themselves, can be made pleasant when mixed with milk or other foods. Some foods which may not be in the mode of goodness strictly, and may also not be in the mode of passion strictly, but they can be made good in the mode of goodness by mixing it with the other foods which are in the mode of goodness. And here Srila Prabhupada talks about milk. If milk is mixed with with baked corn or molasses, though they're not palatable in themselves, but can be made pleasant when mixed with milk or other foods, they are then in the mode of goodness. So there are certain foods which are not strictly mode of goodness, but mixed with mode of goodness foods, they become also in the mode of goodness. All these foods are pure by nature. Which foods? Those foods which fall in the mode of goodness. They are quite distinct from untouchable things like meat and liquor. Fatty foods, as mentioned in the 8th verse, have no connection with animal fat obtained by slaughter. Animal fat is available in the form of milk, which is the most wonderful of all foods. So animal fat, okay. Milk, butter, cheese, and similar products give animal fat in a form which rules out any need for killing of innocent creatures. It is only through brute mentality that this killing goes on. The civilized method of obtaining needed fat is by milk. Slaughter is the way of subhumans. Protein is amply available through split peas, dal, and whole wheat. So there are some people argue, especially those who are not vegetarians, they argue, if we don't eat meat, and even many of the doctors and many of the scientists argue this point, that if one doesn't eat meat, then one will not get one's protein, one will not get the fat which is needed by the body. But Prabhupada here is very, very clearly talking about that the fat which falls under the mode of goodness can be obtained by milk. And milk is a wonder product, most wonderful of all foods. One can survive if need to be just on milk. So milk contains all the nutrients of all the proteins, all the minerals one ever needs. So just one product, everything is contained in that, all the nutrients which is required. And Prabhupada is very much here talking about people when they talk about obtaining fat and also obtaining protein. But Prabhupada categorically states that protein is easily available in dal and lentils and peas, etc. So all one's daily requirements of fat, protein, minerals, etc., can be easily obtained by eating sattvic food, or those food which is in the mode of goodness. But food being in the mode of goodness is not sufficient. It has to be sanctified. Therefore, in the text in chapter 3, Krishna again talks about how to sanctify food. And if one doesn't sanctify, then what happens? 3:13 Yagya shishta shana santo muchante sarvikilbashe bhujante te tva agham papam ye pachante atma karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Sacrifice again means which is offered to the Lord. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yema bhakta pranashati. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So the food in the mode of goodness is not sufficient by itself. It has to be offered as a sacrifice. In today's world we live in, the amount of animals which are slaughtered to obtain fat and protein is staggering, and some of the numbers are actually unbelievable. It is said that all the animals combined, they number 3 times the population of human beings, more than 3 times. It is said there are at any time which are living 19 billion you have chickens. Like that, anyway, I won't go into details, but billions and billions of animals are there. And billions of animals are slaughtered every year. One example, 50 billion chicken are slaughtered every year. 50 billion chicken. Every year they're slaughtered all over the world for people's personal sense enjoyment and for them to obtain meat, protein and also fat, as they said is needed. 1.5 billion pigs are killed every year. 500 million sheep are killed every year. So similar number of goats are killed every year, and billions of cows are killed every year, just for the production of meat around the world. And Prabhupada says this is subhuman way of obtaining these nutrients. It's not civilized. Civilized method of obtaining needed fat is by milk. Prabhupada goes on, foods in the mode of passion, which are bitter, too salty, or too hot, or overly mixed with red pepper, cause misery by reducing the mucus in the stomach, leading to disease. Foods in the mode of ignorance or darkness are essentially those that are not fresh. Any food cooked more than 3 hours before it is eaten, except prasadam, food offered to the Lord, is considered to be the mode of darkness. Because they are decomposing, such foods give a bad odor, which often attracts people in this mode, but repulses those in the mode of goodness. We find that many people in this world, they don't cook fresh anymore. With the aid of preservatives, with the aid of the fridge, the freezer, the food once prepared is kept for days, sometimes weeks, because there are other priorities in life. One doesn't have time to cook fresh, but the Vedic system is still kind of pursued to a certain extent, and many people in the West also, they want fresh cooking is advocated. In India there were no fridges up till now. Even in the West there were no fridges, so that automatically meant to cook fresh. And especially in India, when the summer, when it's so hot, reaches 45-50 degrees, it's very difficult to keep things preserved. Especially therefore, the tradition has been to eat fresh. Even now, some people at home, even though they may have fridges, they buy vegetables fresh before it's cooked. Because otherwise, these type of foods, which is cooked more than 3 hours, obviously cause disease, cause mucus by increasing mucus, by reducing mucus in the stomach. Except prasadam, Prabhupada says. Prasadam, once offered food in the mode of goodness, offered to the Lord, becomes prasad, but that can be kept more than 3 hours if needed to be. But general practice is not. One should cook and eat within 3 hours if possible. That is the general guideline is given in the scriptures, and here Prabhupada's in this text also has been talked about greatly. And Prabhupada continues in his in the purport, last paragraph. Remnants of food may be eaten only when they are part of a meal that was first offered to the Supreme Lord, or first eaten by saintly persons, especially the spiritual master. Remnants uchishtam, uchishtam api chamedhyam. Normally uchishtam api chamedhyam. Chamedhyam is untouchable. Somebody's uchishtam or remnant is in the for those practicing mode of goodness is forbidden. But that is it. That is a fashion, that's a trend in this world, amongst friends, amongst family members, amongst in a social circle. One normally eats together and eat each other's food, eat each other's remnants. But those in the mode of goodness, they regard this as forbidden activity. But this uchishtam from the Supreme Lord, known as Mahaprasad, or one's guru, or or from highly advanced sages, saints and devotees, that is very much relished and very much in demand. Because this uchishtam or remnants is actually very purifying. It's very purifying. We know, we read in Bhagavatam, Narad Muni's previous life, he was a son of a maid, and he used to serve the great devotees when this, especially once during the monsoon period, when they stopped over once for 4 months. So he had the opportunity with his mother to serve these great sages, and he ate their remnants. And by serving and eating uchishtam, he became Narad Muni's next life. So this type of uchishtam is very much in demand and very much needed, and that's why any prasad or remnants comes, devotee is actually very much eager to have this particular type of prasad. There's a devotee in UK, his name is Jayadev Prabhu. He does regressions, he does alternative medicine therapies, and long time ago in a class he related one story. One devotee came to see him. He was having some problems, some mental issues, so he regressed him and took him back. He was a young devotee in his mid-30s. So Jayadev Prabhu put him in that regression mode and took him from the present life to his earlier lives, when he was 10 years ago, when he was a teenager, when he was in his family life with his parents, relationships, and when he was at school, etc. So he found there were some problems. He was bullied at school. This devotee didn't have some good relations with his parents, and other things that worked prior to coming to ISKCON. So he was going through tremendous stress and distress. So Jayadev, while kind of put him in regression mode, he told him to go back when he was in the womb. He went in the womb, and next he told him to go back in your previous life. So Jayadev Prabhu asked this devotee, so what do you see? Where are you in his previous life? He says, I am in the sky. I'm flying. So he was a bird in his previous life. So Jayadev Prabhu became very curious. He says, he was thinking, from a bird body to become a devotee, it doesn't add up, because to come to a human platform, you go through various other species before you come to human level. Not from a bird. One doesn't come from bird species straight to human level. So he was curious, so he asked him a few more things. What are you doing? Where are you? Tell me what activities you're doing. So he just told him what the birds do. They eat, worms, etc., etc. They fly here, there. But at one point, this devotee in the bird body, he said, now I'm flying. I see a big building in front of me. I enter this building, this beautiful ornate building. I enter and I see 2 people standing. And in front of the 2 people, there's some food stuff. I go, I sit on the platform, and I eat, and I fly away. Guess what that was? That was in a temple. There was a temple, and that bird ate was the prasad which was offered or left on the altar. So, and then because of that, he actually obtained the human form, not just human form, but a devotee, just eating remnants of the Mahaprasad. So what effect the remnants Uchishtam has on one's spiritual life. And also we hear and we read the story of Ramanujacharya, a few stories about Uchishtam. Ramanujacharya, once he was traveling with his disciples, and so he ate something and threw it in the river. Immediately the fishes came and they ate his remnants, and his disciples saw those fishes transform into four-armed Vishnu forms, and they went back to Godhead. So the effect of eating remnants of great devotees. Then his disciples asked, Gurudev, we eat your remnants every day, but how come we still here? Anyway, Ramanujacharya said, you don't have faith. Shraddhavana labhate jnanam. You're not up to that level yet, but you will eventually. There are many other stories. We know that in the early days of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada himself prepared prasad for the devotees who joined ISKCON. By himself preparing, actually when one prepares prasad or food prepared by a great devotee has equal effect than eating that devotee's remnants. Why? Because when one prepares food, normally in any situation, normally when one prepares food, one's consciousness is transformed into that particular food, especially grains. And that's why it is very important, and here we will read later on, it's very important that while cooking, the cook must be in the right mentality, right consciousness. That's why strict guidelines are given, not just in terms of what can be eaten, but how the food can be, prasad can be prepared. One must be in cleanliness state in terms of, the clothes, have had a shower, new tilak, etc. But also one's mind must be very clear. That's why when devotees prepare food for offering, they normally have a kirtan playing, lecture playing, so the mind is kind of focused on spiritual things. Everything is clean nearby, the kitchen is clean, mind is clean, the body is clean, the clothes are clean, the environment is clean. And even now, many of the rich people in India, those who don't have time to cook for themselves, but those who are spiritually inclined, or those who have knowledge, and that this was a tradition in India, and to a certain degree it still continues, that the rich people, they employed not an ordinary cook. They will always employ a Brahmin cook. They used to call him Maharaj. Because they knew at least this person is somewhat spiritual, and whatever he will cook will be cooked in the right consciousness, not the consciousnness we see sometimes when you go to restaurants or in the shops outside on the street. The cook is, in one hand he's smoking bidi, in the other hand he's stirring the sabji, or at the same time he's listening to the filmy music. And so you can imagine what type of consciousness it goes into the food that is being prepared, and what type of consciousness the person who will eat it will have. Either a machine consciousness, because a lot of the food is processed, or either by this type of consciousness. But it is very important that the consciousness has to be right, proper, spiritual, and then only it will have its effect. And that's what Prabhupada did in the early days. He prepared, Mahabhagavat was preparing ISKCON bullets and other prasad, and look at the effect it had on those individuals who became and became great devotees and continue to do wonderful service for ISKCON. So, just to continue, otherwise the remnants of food are considered in the mode of darkness, and they increase infection or disease. Such foodstuffs, although very palatable to the persons in the mode of darkness, are neither liked or even touched by those in the mode of goodness. The best food is the remnants of what is offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the Supreme Lord says that He accepts preparations of vegetables, flour and milk when offered with devotion. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Of course, devotion and love are the chief things which the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts. So even though the prasad can also be, although in mode of goodness, but can also sometimes can also be prepared in the mode of passion and ignorance. And Prabhupada talks about that Krishna ultimately accepts the love and devotion which goes into preparing it. That's why Krishna is known as Bhav Grahi Janardhan, and we know very well in Mahabharata, Lord Krishna refused the huge feast of Duryodhan, although it was prepared by Brahmins, although it was prepared in the mode of goodness, yet it did not have the love and devotion as the peels of bananas offered by the wife of Vidura. And Vidura, his wife, didn't even offer Krishna, although she prepared a feast for him, but she ended up giving him just the peels of the bananas. But that peel contained her love and devotion, and that's what Krishna eats. Ultimately, Prabhupada points that out, ultimately, that's what matters at the end of the day. And we find there are many stories about that in terms of prasad not being quote and unquote proper, or not being on time either. And we know, anyway, I won't go into that. But one time, Srila Prabhupada in London, he came to London and had darshan of Radha London Ishvara. After darshan, he called the president and he said, why is the offering is not being made on time? Radha London Ishwar had complained to Prabhupada, look, I'm not getting my offering on time. And president, he went and he asked around and found out, yes, lately at that time, the prasad was few minutes late. The offering was few minutes late. So, even let alone prepared in the right consciousness, especially if it's being offered in a temple, it has to be disciplined. That's why there are guidelines. Prabhupada talks about that in the purport. The great authorities have said how prasad should be offered, what type of mentality should be offered, how it should be offered, etc., etc., etc. So let's finish the purport. But it also mentioned that prasadam should be offered in a particular way. That's what Prabhupada's talking about here. In a particular way. On time, as one particular way, on time. And food prepared by the injunctions of scripture and offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be taken even if prepared long, long ago. Because such food is transcendental. Therefore, to make food antiseptic, eatable, and palatable for all persons, one should offer food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are a couple of other stories. Sometimes there's a temple here in Vrindavan, Radha Braj Mohan temple. I don't know if those who've had the opportunity to take darshan. They are the deities of Narottam Das Thakur. I'm sure there are many pastimes in this temple as well, with Krishna, Balaram, Radha, Shyamsundar, Gaur-Nitai. Each temple have their own pastimes with the deities, especially the cooks and the pujaris who cook and do service for the deities. Even at Bhakti-Vedanta Mana, there are many stories. But in Vrindavan, one story I just heard recently, Radha Braj Mohan Temple, the Baba, the Pujari who does the main servitor there, he says Braj Mohan regularly, if he doesn't like particular preparation, when they offer, they put everything on a tray, the little utensils, katoris, bowls, and sometimes they find the bowl has been taken out of the tray and put to the side. Because Braj Mohan has not liked that particular preparation. And sometimes he says, sometimes when you eat, if you don't like, you spit it out. He says you see some remnants on the floor. So these are, it has to be prepared in a particular way. Even prasad has to be prepared in a particular way. There are many other stories to elucidate these particular points, but one has to follow the injunctions of the scriptures, how to prepare, when to prepare, what the mentality should be. In terms of cleanliness, one should be cleanse inside and outside, and also it must be on time, and there are different types of preparations which should be offered. It's all listed in the scriptures, and that must be followed strictly. Ultimately, Prabhupada says, though it is one's love and devotion that matters, but in sadhana bhakti, these other standards, they take prominence. And it is through that sadhana bhakti one will one will develop the love and devotion as instructed by Srila Prabhupada. And one must be very strict in terms of eating, because there's a saying in English, you are what you eat. Our eating affects the whole of our consciousness. So in terms of eating, one has to be most strict. Sometimes one can make some compromise. I'm not saying we should all the time, what we wear and who we associate with, because especially if one does business and other aspects, one has to compromise in these things. But one thing one should never try to compromise. It's sometimes difficult. It's very easy, those devotees stay in the temple or in the dham like this, but sometimes may not be very easy, who don't have this type of facilities, and they have to mingle with the world we live in. But one thing one should try the most is to be uncompromising with the food one eats, the food and drink one takes. And if that is done, then one will find that one's consciousness remains pure, one's mind remains pure, and one's faith actually becomes much stronger. And one finds that if one is strict with one's diet, one's environment and one's association, and especially with one's diet, people around you, actually initially they may make fun, they laugh at you or deride you, but they actually respect you inside. And eventually they will respect that that person is principled. Anyone who's principled in whatever area of one's life, that principality or the act of principle is normally very respected. And especially in India, although India is 70% non-vegetarian, out of 1.3 billion people, only 30% are vegetarians. And out of 30%, only minority are actually Vaishnavas, strict Vaishnavas. And a Vaishnava, a person on the path of devotional service, as mentioned earlier on, a Vaishnava will not even accept food made in the mode of goodness. A Vaishnava will always accept food which is offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only prasad a Vaishnava will eat. Because food is, as Prabhupada says, he starts the purport. The purpose of food is to increase the duration of life, purify the mind, and aid bodily strength. Without these things, one cannot perform one's devotional service. So it is very important to look after ourselves in the path of devotional service, and not artificially do things. Prabhupada also said, one's health, one's japa, and one's service. These are the three orders one must follow. And one's health is based on the food, primarily. There's physical health and mental health. Mental health is also affected by one's physical health, naturally. So food, prasad is very important, and we must be very strict. And that's why this topic has come up, because Krishna is mentioning that food is divided into three modes of material nature: mode of passion, mode of goodness, and mode of ignorance. Most of the world, they eat food in the mode of ignorance and mode of passion, but only very few, only minority eat in the mode of goodness. And Prabhupada says that we must come at least to the mode of goodness, and then transcend that to purified goodness, sattva gun. And only on that platform we can perform devotional service. All these things, especially food, will aid us in our practice of devotional service, and that is the ultimate. Great devotees, very advanced devotees, we read in the scriptures, they come to a stage where they don't need to eat. That is a different level. Some of us, we're not on the level yet. We read Raghunath Das Goswami or other Goswamis, they only used to eat a glass or half a glass of buttermilk every other day, every week, something like that, because they are on a different level. But for us, most of us, we have to be very careful in terms of our eating habits. I think I'll stop here. If there's any corrections, comments or questions, we can discuss. It's for the those listening.
What happens if we overeat, if we eat more than we need? What happens then mentally and physically?
Yeah, I mean, eating more than necessary is not recommended at all. And if we eat more than necessary, we know ourselves become lethargic, become lazy, and that affects our consciousness, and definitely. And other natural. If we continue to overeat, we will gain weight, and by excessive weight, I'm looking from a material point of view. By excessive weight, there's so many diseases. Most of the diseases in the body comes with being overweight, and overeating is not recommended. Ayurveda talks about that one should eat 50. If we can visualize and measure, I don't know how, half of the stomach should only be eaten. The 50% of the stomach we should eat, and 25 we should keep empty. So it gives kind of proportions. So overeating is definitely not recommended. If one overeats, one sleeps a lot, and then it's a natural, biologically speaking, if overeating, then blood rushes from other parts of the body to the stomach, and that's why one feels lethargic, sleepy, etc. So that is, everything has to be in balance. Everything has to be balanced. Yes, absolutely. It affects consciousness. If one becomes lethargic, lazy, naturally consciousness goes down. Because if the body is not helping the mind, mind means consciousness, and if the body is not assisting, then also the consciousness will also go down. So the body's strength is there to assist our mind as well as, and consciousness is a symptom of the soul. And if body is not helping us, then what can the soul and the mind do? So there has to be balance. Unless we are on a different platform where we are beyond the body level, that's a different story. That's a different level altogether. Then the balance between the body and mind is not necessary, because one is beyond the bodily platform. But for those who practicing sadhana bhakti, keeping the we should not be on the bodily platform, at least theoretically, but practically, though we're not the body, but we're in the body. So we have to keep this body together, healthy. No, if not for anything else, but for service, for our sadhana bhakti.
Yes. So as you see, we take the food sometimes from outside and we offer to the Lord and take prasad, because it becomes prasad. The Lord purifies that. So can you say something about that? How the purification is done, the food cooked from outside from the Lord?
Well, that is not recommended. That actually, it is said the Lord will not accept anything, first of all, without offering tulsi, having tulsi in the offering. Secondly, unless and until it's been prepared and according to the injunctions of the scriptures that Prabhupada mentions in the purport. However, sometimes one has to be practical. Sometimes one has to be in, just like Prabhupada instructed Harikesh Maharaj in Russia. He was Maharaj, he was at that time. Was he not? No, I'm saying at that time. So when he instructed Maharaj at that time, because he did not want to go to Russia to preach. He says, you can't find anything to eat. Eat means only veg, you can't find anything vegetarian to eat. It's mostly meat. Prabhupada said, go and preach, eat meat if you have to. So that's a different story. But we should not follow those examples unless it comes from higher authorities. But on a different level, on a practical level, sometimes it becomes necessary, especially when it's traveling. So even the devotees, sometimes they travel and preach. They have to accept foods prepared from outside, maybe not in a manner it should be, but we have to preach. So, but that food should still be offered with love and devotion, and then Krishna will accept that.
Thank you. One more point, you were giving the example of a person, he went in his previous life and he said he was bird, and he went in the building and took some prasad, and he was purified and he became a devotee. And another example you were giving, when we Guru and Guru throw something in the water, the fishes, they were immediately fed. The conscious of the fishes and the conscious of the bird was not an devotional or something like that, but the purification, how they got the purification.
No, see, that was, let me just switch it off. See, sometimes the consciousness of the bird and the fishes, they had no bad or good thoughts. They were neutral. So what affected the most, that is to show the power of the prasad, spiritual power of prasad. Sometimes the prasad doesn't act as effectively on humans than it may do on animals, because animals not going through those the negative, positive mode of this goodness, backbiting, politics, and this and that. So therefore, that's why when the Ramanujacharya's disciples asked him, Gurudev, we eat your remnants every day, but we're still in this human body. And Ramanujacharya said, you don't have faith enough yet. At least, although they don't have faith, but they're pure. You're not pure enough. They're not going through the ups and downs of human nature. So that way, that prasad affected most on those fishes and the bird. But when we go, or at least when I eat, I look at even this prasad, whether it's gone off or not, whether it's we have other parameters. My liking, I don't like Karela, I don't want to eat prasad like this. Prasad is prasad. So we have so many other parameters to judge on. They don't have any parameters to judge. So it has more effect on them, sometimes on us.
So here in Vrindavan, monkeys are taking prasadam, so they will take benefit.
Sorry?
In Vrindavan, monkeys are taking prasadam.
Oh,
so they take benefit.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Prabhupada said, any animal here, any human being is the last life. Sorry, Mataji?
That's the last.
Last life, yes. Yeah. At least the monkeys are eating, not, even if you throw prasad which is 10 days old, which has fungus on, they will eat. They will remove the fungus and eat. We will see the fungus, throw it in the bin. So it depends on the consciousness and the understanding.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, when it comes to the deity worship at home, we have our deity. Do we have to strictly follow all the rules and regulations given in the scripture and being followed in the temple? Or
Generally, the deity worship at home, the rules and regulations are lax. They're not as strict as followed in the temple. But one must follow what you agree to follow. And that comes with the consultation with, your guru or senior devotees and even the pujaris in the temple in terms of what standard you can maintain. You don't have to offer 7 artis a day. If you don't want to, you can. Depends what one is able to do. In the temple, there's 6-7 artis a day, 6-7 times prasad is made. So the standard is different. At home, that may not be practical. So it just depends on one situation. Some grastas, they have, so the standard varies from house to house because of their ability and capabilities and time factor, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, one thing's for sure, if generally the standard is not same as in the temple now.
so it's okay, but you can follow, maintain the standard as per your.
But with consultation, if you have a guru, consult with your guru. If you have a spiritual authority, consult with that spiritual authority. If you don't have any of that, come and speak with the head pujari here and get some guidance as what can be done, what can't be done. It's not that, I like to doing this, I don't like doing this. So our personal preference should not be there. Otherwise, don't have deity worship. There are certain basic standards has to be followed, no doubt. Mataji.
It also depends on what deity you have.
Yes,
Krishna's higher standard of qualities.
yes. It depends which deities one has also. Gonitai deities, Radha Krishna deities. Yeah. Gonitai is generally recommended the grastas to have Gonitai deities because the least offense is, or no offense, is done while performing the by worshipping Gonitai deities. Whereas if you worship Radha Krishna deities, is 100% offense done. Like that, so it also depends on what type of deities one has as well. But Srila Prabhupada also recommended, in fact he wanted those who stay near the temple, and he wanted the devotees to live near the temples, and their prime form of worship should be the deities in the temple. That should be the prime form of worship, and they should eat prasadam in the temple. That's what Prabhupada wanted. Not sometimes we see certain devotees, because they're so busy, in a good way, busy, quote and unquote, busy in worshipping the deities at home, they don't have time to come and do seva at the temple. And they don't have time to come and take darshan of the deities in the temple. Prabhupada did not want that. So one has to have a balance between one's home worship and connected with the temple, your local temple worship. Because prime form of worshipable deities are the temple deities. Okay, anything else? Then otherwise we stop. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki